Hi, everybody. This is Tara Bradley with The Growth State, and I'm super excited to have a guest with us today. His name is Aaron Levy, and he is the founder and CEO of Raise the Bar, which is a firm that is focused on helping create high-performing teams. He's also the author of the best-selling book, Open, Honest, and Direct, which I'm hoping we're going to get to dig into a little bit today. And that is, it's a guide. It's the exact title is Open, Honest, and Direct. I get excited about that part, but it's a guide to unlocking your team's potential, which I know in this space, as we're scaling and growing teams, some of us for the first time, this is a way to really get some focus and knock it out of the park. So thank you, Aaron, so much for joining us today. We're excited to have you.
Thank you, Tara, for having me on, and just excited to have this conversation.
Very cool. So I love to start all of my interviews with a really similar question. And I find it's particularly meaningful to those of us who have transitioned out of a day-to-day kind of corporate position, and we're helping people grow and build and scale companies and their mindset around leadership. And I usually find authors in particular have experienced some point of pain. Oops, sorry. I find that authors in particular have experienced some point of pain where they've made a pivot in their career and their transition, and they've kind of said, hey, I've done this thing and it was painful and I don't want to do it again. And I think I can help people learn from my experiences. And so I'm going to share either through coaching or consulting or through a book like you did yourself. And I was wondering if you could kind of share that pain point that you had that maybe had you pivot into this direction in your career.
Yeah, I think I've always been in the realm of human behavior and behavior change. And I've been really, really fortunate, even for my first role at a health and well-being startup, to be able to do work that impacted other people and do work that I felt made a difference. And yet, as we were doing that in our first company, I also realized the challenge of having a client that doesn't see the difference that you're making in the way that you're making it, and also not having like a product market fit with the market. And so that was kind of like something that I knew I needed to translate and say, hey, anything that we do, there has to be a need, a strong desire from the organization. And we need to match that in a really good way, because what we were doing was great, but it wasn't being recognized and seen, and it wasn't being appreciated in certain ways. And it also caused challenges because the client had a different perspective and the clients had different perspectives than what we had. And so that was one really important thing. And the other one was management's really important. And most managers suck. Mm-hmm. And I saw that, myself, and being a manager who was promoted to leading a team of people, and I didn't know what I was doing. I remember like the day that the team was like, yeah, we need to give head of operations to somebody. And no one was like wanting it. And they said, Aaron, you're good with talking to people. You're good with the team. Like, you'd be good at it. And I was like, okay. And took it on and really didn't know what I was doing and really didn't know how to do that. And it just, I had the guidance and the help of a coach along the way, and a couple of coaches along the way. And that really helped me take the time to really think about how do I show up as a leader. And without that, I would have been kind of screwed. Mm-hmm. And so realizing that most of my friends were in similar positions, were working for people in similar positions. And, the more I looked around, I realized that most managers suck. And it's not because they want to suck. It's because they're promoted because they're good at what they do, not because they're good at leading people. And those are two very different skill sets.
Yeah, for sure. One of the things I always tell my leaders as they progress through, I'm like, hey, this is a volunteer position. Like, you're going to volunteer for this and you're still going to be great at all the things that you did. And yeah, we'll give you a little more compensation, but you're kind of raising your hand saying, I want to grow and I want to build in this way. And I think that you hit the nail on the head, and you're like, so you were really great at something else. No one else is kind of volunteering for these other responsibilities. So someone will step up, but there's not really this, guidebook or game plan, really to get them to that next step. And so I love that you bring that up. You brought up an interesting point, and, we deal with that all the time in scaling companies, and especially for those that are trying to get funding, is you always want to solve a problem, right? You want to be out there solving a problem. And I think you express that a little bit in your pain points, like you weren't always connecting. And I would think in your business, it can be really difficult because depending on who decides they want to bring in somebody to develop their managers, someone may think, yes, we're filling a problem or we're doing that. And then you come in and you're working with people who may not have been part of that decision process or even good at evaluating their own skill set as a leader or a coach or a mentor or a manager. And so how do you address that when you come into an organization the first time? You're like, hey, they're scaling, they're growing like crazy. They've got all of these leaders who were either picked because they have a great leadership background or they were really good at something else and now they've raised their hand. How do you navigate all of those different perspectives? So I think you identified like, hey, we've got a problem and we can't get to the root of the issue with them. Like, how do you get them to see the vision of what you're bringing to the table?
Yeah, there's a couple of things, and it was from the earlier parts of my career where I was like, one, I'm only going to work with real partners, and that means it's not a client. And I had one client who we fired who said, "We're not your partner, we're your client." I was like, okay, that's why we're not going to be working together in the future,
Yeah.
in some uncertain ways, and it's because it truly is a partnership, and we have to the work that it takes to develop your leaders, to change your culture, to take yourself from one stage of maturation, 50 to 100 employees to 250, 500 employees, takes effort and energy, and not just from somebody on the outside coming in and doing the work. What we can do is we can provide the foundation of skills, but your people need to take them, and you need to create the environment for them to be able to adopt those skills and put them into practice. And so what we've done is all along, just even in the finding a client and the sales process, is we tend to weed out those types of clients. And so we ask over and over again and get really clear and engaging conversations with our partners to say, what does success look like? Why are we having this conversation? Why are you bringing us in? And over again, it's our access to growth, our access to scaling comes through our employees. Our people are our access to success. They're not like a resource that we can utilize and move around. It's like they're our access to success. And they need to show up in a very powerful way for us to be able to grow and take the next step. And in order to do that, we need to invest in them. And so we don't convince any companies that leadership is important. We work with the companies that understand that leadership is their key to their future success. And we are just experts in how do you develop leaders. That's where our whole expertise is. And so by being really clear on what we do and who we talk to, it makes it really easy to start to have those conversations. And it might make it a little bit more uncomfortable up front to be like, you know what, this isn't a fit, right? If you, chief people officer, really buys in, but your CEO doesn't, and it doesn't matter how much you want this, if your CEO doesn't believe in this, I tell people all the time, like this, we'll do work together in the future. Things might change in the future, but right now, it's not a fit. You guys aren't a fit. And that could change, right? That could change in an
Yeah.
instant. And we're open to that, right? We're not saying this is over for good, but it's saying it's okay that it's not a fit. You don't need to feel bad for saying no to us. And we actually just need to say like, hey, this probably isn't the right fit just yet, but something might change in a week, a day, 6 months.
Yeah. I think there's so many good nuggets that you had in there, right? And so I'm going to hit on a couple of them. And I'm probably going to come back because I feel like we're going all over the place, but you said some really cool things that I think will really resonate with this audience, and that we're all in that period, right? So you're just like the rest of this audience, you're growing a business, you're scaling, you're doing all those things. And you brought up something that I think is absolutely critical. You have to know your niche, right? The riches are in the niches. You have to know who is your core market. Who are you out there selling to? Who is a great partner for you? Because the best way to kill growth and to not be able to scale is to get a client that's not a right fit for you, right? They take up a ton of your time. You're constantly changing your processes and your delivery mechanism, and even how you communicate with them, because they're not a great fit. And I love that you brought up that you fired a client, because it's one of the things I think we're terrified to do when we scale, right? Or when we're going through a period of growth. We're afraid to take a client that's guaranteed revenue and say, you're not a great fit for us. And so for you, I love that you brought that up, and I'd love for you to talk about that process a little bit, because I've done it. I know you've done it. And that's a hard thing to do. How do you get okay with that and communicate it to your team? Like, it's not failure if we just say, hey, this isn't a great fit. It's not a great partnership, and it's not forever, which I think is another great point.
Yeah, we really lean on our values of embracing beginner's mind, doing the next hard thing, acting with authenticity and humility, having fun, and standing our commitment. And we ask every leader that goes through training to like embody that, at least for the training. And inherently that means kind of every client and partner embodies that. And we ask our team to embody that. And so it's actually pretty easy when one of those values is like supremely getting violated consistently. You can kind of tell that this person or this company is not a fit. So it actually would look worse on me if I didn't fire a client, but put up with something that they were doing, because my whole team would know, right? Then I wouldn't be living into our values. And so I started to raise the bar, not just so that we can create a new future where managers are better leaders, right? Where they're coaches for their people, but also so that we could be the example of how work can be done better. And so if I'm not living that example at our size, right, at 10 people, what am I saying to the clients that we're working with, right? Like I'm actually not proving the example. And at 150, 500, 1,000 person company, if I can't even live the example at 10, how can I expect you to live the example at 200? And so for me, it becomes fairly easy, and it took time to get used to that and comfortable with that. But here's the best example of the importance of having good clients. Like COVID hit, 90% of our business or 70% of our business was done live, right? We had trips to Belgium, we had trips to New York, we had trips all over the place scheduled, and right in the matter of a week, everything was canceled. And my first paranoia as a business owner, small business owner, was like, what's going to happen to everything? Not only did all of our partners, our clients stay, but they did more with us than we expected. And to me, that just reiterates the importance of having really good people that you want to work with. Like when people ask me, who can I introduce you to? I said, well, this is the the niche, the market that we go after, and they got to be good people. I don't want, don't put me in touch with an asshole, because it's not worth my time, it's not worth their time. And so no, I answered your question by going to the opposite of why it's so important to have good clients, which just highlights why if you don't have a good client, it's not worth it. Because the good clients bring more, buy more, support more, make work more fun for everybody. Like work should be fun. It's like we're here for a short period of time on earth. Like I want to enjoy what I'm doing. And I want my people to enjoy what they're doing. And so it just makes it so there's so many levels why it's clear that if someone's an asshole or not a good client, then they probably shouldn't be a fit. And honestly, usually they know it too, because the way our interactions are going, it's not a fit for them. So sometimes they'll fire us, and it'll just be one of those, right, where you part ways and hey, this isn't either one.
No, I think that's a great point. And one of the things that I think people forget about terrible clients, and terrible is probably not even a good word. It's just not a good fit, right? They're not in your market. I mean, you maybe don't realize that right away. They're expensive. If you're not meeting their expectations, they're constantly calling, they're pushing on somebody, probably abusing some of your staff. And not only are they expensive that way, they're more expensive to support. They could cost you really good talent. And to your point, if you're not living your values and saying, no, it's not something we're going to put up with, you're going to lose somebody really talented. And the cost of replacing them is astronomical, especially when you're, like a lot of us, 10, 20 people shop and trying to do that. The last thing you want to do is lose a great resource because you had a bad client fit. You brought up another thing that we've actually had a couple of other speakers hit on, and that was really knowing and communicating your values to your team and living those values. We have dealt with a few of our speakers have said, everybody used to talk culture. It's culture fit, it's culture fit, it's culture fit. And I think people are starting to understand that culturally, we haven't done a great job, right? We've not been incredibly diverse and bringing in, talent. And really it comes down to defining those values and being able to articulate them to not only your client base, but to your staff as well. Is that something that you've always done with your team, or was that a bit of an evolution for you as well?
No, day one. It was something that, I think I said this earlier, the reason I started the team was I didn't want to be a solopreneur. I didn't want to go do workshops and cohorts and boot camps and coaching and all that and strategy with companies by myself. I wanted a team. Yeah. I wanted a team of people together, because that's been the most fun part about work, is seeing the team grow and growing with the team and evolving. And, more minds make better ideas than just one person in their silo. And so it was very clear from day one of not only what do we want this business to look like, but how do we want our team to operate? And being clear on that has helped me. Now we've gotten clear on the values and they've gotten richer and fuller. And now that we have more experiences and team members experiencing them, it just grows and evolves in that way. But we were very clear from the start, like this is who we are. And we need to be clear on who we are and how we operate together. And everybody that comes on board is a part of that. Even if you're, a part-time contractor, this is like what we expect of you. And it makes it so that when we look for culture fit, it's really, do they match the values, right? Not do I know somebody who went to college with me,
right.
But the culture fit is, does somebody hold these values? Whatever race, gender, ethnicity, you name it, whatever that is, are those values matched? And that's what, when we look for culture fit, we look for, do they live into our values or strive to live into our values? Because no one's perfect.
Right.
I certainly don't live into our values every single day. I strive to live into our values every single day.
I love that. And I think I would assume that you're like myself, where you put the values out there and you say, we're doing this, but to your point, not everybody's perfect. Nobody's perfect. Not only not is everybody, nobody is perfect. And you'll find yourself tripping and giving people permission, I think, to call us on it. With us as leaders and people are growing companies, that's part of that journey too, right? Is to be able to say, listen, I'm not perfect. And as long as you call me on it respectfully and we talk through it and you assume positive intent, then, we can get through just about anything. So I love that you brought that up. One of the other things that you brought up that I'd love for you to talk about, because I think a lot of people that are in this space where they're going to try to 5X their company over the next couple of years, they're building a team, they've got something that's getting some traction and they're really trying to get to scale. A lot of times it's a founder CEO or it's a CEO who's a fairly new to the role. They're taking that opportunity to get in the space and they start to realize, like, I need to develop as a leader because I've never led a team before. It's been very, very small. Or I'm building a team and I don't know how to develop them. And so how do you help them kind of figure out their own strategy as a leader? Or even those that sometimes say, I'm not that guy. Yes, I'm the founder and I want to be here for the long haul with that company, but I'm not the person that's going to go invest in these managers and coaches, and I need someone else for that. How do you help them mature through that process?
Yeah, I think it's one, them getting clear on what their role is. And as your company grows, you need to, as a founder, CEO, you need to constantly rewrite your job description. It doesn't ever stick. It always changes, right? When you bring in the first marketing person, you go from head of sales, head of marketing, head of delivery to head of sales, head of delivery, partner in marketing, like whatever that is, right? So you need to constantly be recrafting your job description and what your role is. And that becomes the point to say, okay, what is the highest and best use for me? What also fills me up? Because if I'm doing something that doesn't fill me up, I'm going to get burnt out quickly. Because starting, founding, and building an organization it's not 2 years, not 3 years, it's 7, 10 years of grinding to get traction. So much of the time when you see the success stories, it's 10 years down the line. And so it has to be one fulfilling in that sense. And you have to be clear on what you want, right? If you don't want to lead and you don't want to run that, then take on the role of the visionary, the strategist, or I do this, or I run sales, or I run engineering, or I run, pick your parts and put people in place around you. And so that's the very first thing. You got to bifurcate and say, am I going to lead people, lead the team, or am I just going to play a role in the team? Whatever that is, there's nothing wrong. There's no judgment. There's no has to be or needs to be or should be's. It's just what is. But you still need to have somebody who's thinking about the team and the organization as you grow. And you need to think about, okay, if it's me, how do I listen better? How do I ask better questions? How do I create a psychologically safe environment? The three things I tell all leaders, like if you're responsible for at any level, and definitely the CEO or founder is, creating clarity on where we're going, what we're doing, how we're working together, even our values, right? Those are rules of the game for how we operate with one another. Context, why are we going in that direction? Why are we doing what we're doing? And safety. Obviously, physical safety is hopefully something that's assumed, but what's not necessarily assumed is psychological safety, right? The feeling or the belief that I can speak up or somebody else on my team can speak up without getting in trouble or getting made fun of or getting hurt. So that, Terry, you can say something to me and I'm not going to be like, why did you say that to me? right? Because we can have an open dialogue. And those three things, clarity, context, and safety, are what creates high performing teams. So you need to think about, what are we doing to create that? And how are we enabling the rest of our team to have that, right? Do we need to train? Do we need to develop our leaders? Do we need to develop our managers? Do we need to create a space for safety to occur? Whatever that is, it's first looking at everything through that lens.
I think that's a great, and I'd love to get your perspective, Aaron, on it. It's really a cycle, right? And it's almost a continuum. Like, as your company scales and grows, you've got 10 or 20 people, and then you get double your revenue and you're at 30. You've got to reevaluate your role kind of pretty consistently, right? To say, am I still doing what I know and love and want to do, or is it time for me to do something else? How do you talk someone through that process, and you're just like, hey, you need to reevaluate this every 6 months or 12 months, or here's a process to do that? How do you work through that with a leader?
Yeah, a good way to think about all this is like, because there's so much that changes in organizations today, it's not like things are static for a period of 3 months or 6 months or even a year.
Mm-hmm.
It's a process that I go through and encourage all of our clients to go through, is every 3 months reevaluating and resetting goals. I call it the review and reset. And you do a big one at the end of the year to plan, right? It's happening now, right? End of 2020 into 2021. What happened in 2020? What can we learn? Where are we missing? What are the gaps? How are we with our value, vision, mission? And what do we need to do next year? Where do we want to go? What's that picture we want to paint for 3 years online and next year as a whole, and next quarter? And so those points, so I say do that once a year, that kind of bigger one with your team, but then once a quarter, you're using that to do your goal setting, right? So like I'm sounding kind of tactical and operational.
Yeah.
But your team and you need to set goals. Don't need to, but something that I find works well is to set goals, and to not just like put them out there, but put them out there and measure them and track them and follow up and learn, right? Oh, that was a goal, but that totally was off base. We need to change it up, or we need to decide we don't actually want to go down that path. So you use them to give you data to go back on and to evaluate on. And as you're doing that, you should also be looking at, what do I need to be doing in here? Where are my priorities? Did it last week. I have this like little Post-it that I wrote down, and I was actually using just like a whiteboard to be writing like, what am I doing now? What do I need to be doing next year to be in the direction we want to be doing and to be fulfilled myself, right? And where do I need to prioritize my time? And then I put it down on the list 1 through 5 to like mentally give myself that. And so I rewrote my job description last week. Right? And at each quarter, or when there's something dynamic that changes, you need to do it. Right? When I was writing the book, I was like, okay, this is part of my role now, is writing this book and getting it launched.
Yeah.
But the book's launched and certain things are happening with it. So is that part of my role anymore? No. I need to like think about where I'm spending my time and be intentional about it, rather than let it just come at me.
And I think it's a great point. And I think one of the things that we all struggle with through that evolution is, this is my role now. These are my priorities. I gave up something to someone else, not just go rip it out of their hands and, not let them be fulfilled and excited about it going forward. I kind of need to let them figure it out and own it, and kind of have their own list and prioritize and make those goals their own. And I know one of the things that you talk about a lot is, how do you give people fulfilling work that they're excited about and they want to grow? And it's really more of a, as a manager, I'm a coach and a mentor as much as I am, a manager, so to speak. And how do you walk them through that process if it's new to them too? Because it's a big part of growing your leaders as your company grows, right?
Yeah, and I'm a firm believer that like the power dynamic in the workplace needs to change, because it slows us down, it makes us inefficient. And so part of that power dynamic is not, I know I have the answers, I give to you, you follow orders, right? It's, I have some thoughts, I have some ideas, and ultimately I'm going to hold you accountable to what you say you're going to do or what we're going to plan together, but you co-create yourself. And so that's part of the mindset, but really the tactical thing that I do, and I just had one of these yesterday with a team member, and it's called a stay interview. And it's the opposite of an exit interview. And it's where you meet with your person, whether it's once a year, once a quarter, once every 6 months. I like it once a quarter, once every 6 months. I think it's a good cadence. And you have a conversation. It's not during a normal one-on-one. It's not during a performance review. It's a separate conversation, usually for coffee. We did it because we're both in Chicago. We walked through Lincoln Park, literally the park, and chatted. And you ask these two questions. What skills are you looking to develop? And how can I support you? And not quickly in sequence. It's what skills are you looking to develop, and let the other person answer and share and elaborate. And they're going to give you the wealth of what skills they want to develop, which is, by the way, distinctly different from how you're looking to grow.
Mm-hmm.
Because if I ask you how you're looking to grow, you're going to tell me I want this role and I want to do this and this and this. If I ask you what skills you're looking to develop, it's not where are you going to be or how much money you're going to make or how much money you want me to pay you.
Right.
It's what do you like? You go to that in your head, but then you have to say, in order to get that COO position, I need to be better at this, this, and this. And then you come to me with that. And we can have a conversation about that because I can support you in that. I can't necessarily give you the role that you want, even as a founder CEO, right? The company might not be growing fast enough. We might not have that need. We might have pivoted, right? Whatever those things are, I might not be able to offer you that, but I can help you build those skills. And then I say, how can I support you? And it's not my role to make that happen for you. It's your role to make it happen for you. But knowing it and holding it there and holding that space for you, I can then throw things your way that will help you foster that, right? I can say, oh yeah, you want to do that? I hate doing that. I've been trying to offload that from my plate. Maybe you can take it and run with it. And I would love for you to run with the analytics because that hurts my brain.
Yeah. I love that you brought that up, and I'd like to expand on it a little bit, maybe even with what you see with your clients, because we've all had those employees, right, where they're great contributors. They maybe get into a leadership role because they think it's the next great progression, but they're not great at telling us, where they have skills and how they want to develop, or identifying that need in their team. And, one of the things I tell my people all the time is, I'm like, I can wish and want and hope for you all day long. And I can see all the potential in you, and I can throw things at you I think you'll be good at, but you don't love them and you don't want to develop that skill. It's just, you're eventually going to burn out and not want to do it. And I'm sure you've seen that with your own employees, and probably more so even with your clients as they're learning this process. How do you help them build that memory muscle that says, hey, as you're talking to people, this is how you help them identify those things and those areas that they want to grow in? If they're saying, I don't know, you just tell me what you want me to do, and then I'll I'll tell you whether I like it or not. How do you teach them how to draw that out of those, that unique subset of the people that we've all run into if we manage people for any period of time, where they're just like, I don't know, whatever it takes to get to the next pay level or title is what I want. When in reality, it's like, well, you're not there because you don't have these skills. Let's talk about that first.
So what I'll share is simple, and it's not easy, right? It's simple, but it's not easy. And this is the sole focus of what we talk about in our Bootcamp 100 series, which is the skills that help you be a better leader, and how do you build those skills into habits. They're not outcomes. It's not like motivating your people. The skills are listening, like the practice of listening with intention, not tension, the practice of asking powerful questions and letting go of your biases. And those are things that there's no checklist that's going to help you do it. It's a practice, and you have to get into it. And so we dive into the weeds over the course of a 3-month boot camp. And how do you actually stand into that skill, and how do you practice it over and over and over and over and over so it becomes habits that you start doing it? But when you listen to somebody, they know. Now, they might not want to answer for themselves. They might not be ready to listen to themselves. They might not be clear, and that's okay. But being there, and sometimes maybe even being in silence, maybe asking, maybe the allowance to not have to fill the space with what you think you should fill the space because you're uncomfortable. That space that you create by being present with the other person allows them a more readily opportunity to open up. Does it mean that everybody's going to open up to you? No. Does it mean it's going to happen overnight? No. Right. But it means most of the time you're cutting off the opportunity by speaking over it. And so being there, being present, asking the questions instead of making yourself feel more comfortable or making the other person feel comfortable, be in that awkward silence or that awkward question. that really needs to be asked, and holding it up that this person's creative, resourceful, and whole, and they actually can figure out their own life. It's not up to me.
I think that's great. And I think the other thing too to remember about that is asking people to tell you what they really want and how they really, what skill they want to develop. It's a really vulnerable place for them, right? Like if you, it's not something that's obvious and they tell you something that's totally out of left field that you take, you never would have thought of, there's some vulnerability over there, right? It's like, what if he thinks I'm crazy, or what if he thinks I can't do it, right? And so I think you're absolutely right. You've got to create that space for them to share, and not. I think one of the things I know I've been guilty of in the past is when they can't quickly tell me something, I'm like, well, what about this? And what about this? And exactly what you said, right? It's like I'm filling a space and trying to make them whole and successful in something that may not even be aligned to what their desires are.
And oftentimes they've never been asked that question by their boss, right? What skills they're looking to develop. So it can take time. People need to process and think, and right, like give them the time and the space. And oftentimes they say, if you've given 60 seconds of silence and the person still hasn't come up with anything, tell them, like, let's come back next week. And you know what? If they know that they're going to have to come up with something, they're going to think about what's important to them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I love that you brought that up in that identifying they maybe have been never asked that question. And I think if they're asked it once, they're like, they don't care. And asked it a second time, like, oh, maybe they do care. Ask it a third time, they're like, okay, they're not going to let this drop. And I think there's still some apprehension sometimes, right? It's like, well, I've never had a job that's been just about me and how I want to develop, as long as I'm doing the job, and I think it's a great point to reinforce, like you said, it's simple, but it's not easy. There are times when they're going to think, well, what else is going on here, and how are they going to use this information? So I think it's a really, really key point that you brought up there.
And another way to think about it too is I'm sure, my guess is we all have friends that complain about their work or complain about their boss or something that's not working, talk about their passions or what they want to be doing, right, in one way, shape, or form, right, and are able to express themselves to their friends. And yet why, when we go to the workplace, can't we do that? And it's not because the workplace has to be all lovey-dovey and, right, high fives all around. It's how do we create a space where someone can be themselves at work, just the same way they're themselves at home. And that's the difference, is we kind of like put up a wall and a barrier to being ourselves. And that's that gap. Like, my boss is asking me, is she going to use this against me? Like, what's going to happen? And when we let go of that, and I let go of this dynamic of like good and bad, and I hold power over you. It's, hey, we're people working together towards a common goal. How do we get there most efficiently and effectively? You need to bring your whole self and what's important to you to be able to be good at it.
Right. No, I think that's perfect. Well, I know we're about out of time. And you and I could probably chat about this for 3 hours and go 100 different directions. But I think that you shared some awesome stuff with us today. And I definitely want people to go check out your book, which is Open, Honest, and Direct, a guide to unlocking your team's potential. How, Aaron, if someone wants to get connected with you, or they're interested in working with your company, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Yeah, so you can go to raisebar.co, that's raisebar.co, and reach out there. You can also go to the other org that we have, which is strideapp.co. It's an on-demand coaching solution. So any one of those, you can go, and there's like quick forms you can reach out. You can always reach out to me on LinkedIn, Aaron Levy. My name, my beard will be there. You can find me there too, and don't be shy.
Perfect. We will definitely have all of Aaron's connection information on his bio page. You can check that out too. Aaron, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time today, and the value that you bring to the audience.
Well, Tara, thank you, and have a great rest of your day.
You too.